My name is Rebecca and I work at Newcastle University, and I would just like to say thank you all for joining today. It is much appreciated. So without further ado, I think let's get the event started. And I would like to introduce Alumni and host for this evening, Ngozi, who studied with us at Newcastle University in 2006 with an MBA and currently lives in London and has just recently delved into the world of consultancy, running her own HR consultancy business. So thank you, Ngozi, for joining us today, and I shall lead it over to you.
Thank you for that kind welcome, Rebecca. It's an absolute pleasure to be asked to host this event. Welcome to you all from far and wide. I hope you have had a good day despite lockdown 2.0. So before we get on with the rest of the evening, there was just some housekeeping points that we need to make you aware of. First of all, and most importantly, this is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with that, please feel free to sort of log off and we will make the recording available to you after the event. And Rebecca will give you sort of timings of that at the end of the event. And secondly, please keep yourselves on mute. Keep your microphones on mute. We don't want any background sounds impacting on the event. So make sure that we have muted you, but make sure that you remain on mute so that we can sort of hear what's being said by the panelists and by Rebecca. And also just to sort of have fun, interact with each other where possible. Make sure that, you enjoy yourselves. If there's any questions that have come up, I know a lot of them have been sort of sent before the event. Make sure you make those, you'll be able to provide those during the presentations by our panelists. So I'm just going to give you a little brief outline because the panelists will be talking a bit more about themselves. I just want to give you a brief rundown of who our panelists are. So panelist number one is Ronnie Reed, and Ronnie was a BA Honours Politics student and is currently, Policy Executive at De Havilland. We've got Kweku Bimpong, who studied pharmacy, graduating in 2019. He is a pre-registration pharmacist in NHS, for the NHS. Our third panelist is Joey Ayun, I hope I said that correctly, pardon me, who studied a Master's in Urban Energy Technology and Policy Architecture in 2018, who is an environmental designer at Boston Partners, and Maria Eugenia Carballes, I'm so sorry, Maria, who studied for a Master's in international marketing, who's a marketing officer for the National Autistic Society. So those are our four panelists who are going to tell us a bit about their lives in London, and I hope you enjoy. So I'm just going to sort of give the floor to them and let the evening begin. Thank you. Over to you, George. Oh.
Thank you very much, Ngozi, and good evening, everyone. So just over the next few minutes, I'm just going to sort of give some of my experiences of finding work, how I found working and living in London, but also some advice on starting work in London, and also a few words on housing as well, because that's a really important issue. But first of all, sort of an introduction on me. I graduated in 2017 with a degree in politics. But then I also spent an extra year as a sabbatical officer. So I served as the president of the Students' Union for a year, which meant I actually left Newcastle fully in the summer of 2018. After that, I spent a little bit of time over in Brussels, working in the European Parliament during the Brexit process. But in April 2019, I moved to London, where I've been since, and I joined an organisation called De Havilland, which is a public affairs company. And my job is basically to brief public affairs professionals, or as they are often referred to, lobbyists, about political developments, both in Westminster but also in Brussels. In terms of my living situation in London, I started actually living in Fulham, which is sort of southwest London, but since October 2019, I've lived in Clapham. So I thought the sort of first section of my piece, I would discuss a little bit about finding work, because I know that on some of the questions that have come through, that's perhaps a concern or an area of kind of questioning. So, you know, speaking personally, and everyone else will have their own kind of experience of this, but I always had a real idea that I wanted to work in politics or in and around policy, that kind of area of work. It was kind of based on my degree, but also other things I've done. So I found the process of getting a job in London, I did find it difficult. There's no point going any other way about it. It was tough. I was often traveling to and from Brussels, and when I got my final job, actually the job that I'm in now, I'd come off a 9-hour bus trip from Brussels, having had 2 hours of sleep. So I did find it quite a difficult process to actually go and get my job. But you know, I would reassure all of those listening that you do get there, and it does happen in the end, and you've just got to keep plugging away and keep those cover letters going, keep those CVs being updated. And just a couple of other things to sort of note, that, you know, I believe the university do offer support after graduation, so really do take the university up on that. But also, you know, everyone here went to Newcastle University. It's an incredibly well-respected institution which has a great reputation across a wide range of sectors. So, you know, please be reassured by that, and by the fact that you went to a great university like Newcastle. So sort of moving on as to how I've found working and living in London, what, you know, in terms of starting that process, I found it a really good one. You know, it will obviously vary, but, you know, in terms of my company, I found the kind of onboarding process into my company very, very easy and very smooth. I found that people around the office were very friendly, and I found that, you know, I put myself out there and I wanted to sort of introduce myself, and that was a really good way to go about it. And I quickly you know, made good working relationships, and many of them have actually really just turned into friends now. So, you know, how have I found working and living in London? Well, look, I think primarily the first thing I want to start off with is that it's such a fantastic place to be socially. So, you know, I'm often in contact with my friends. Obviously, it's more difficult during the kind of pandemic period, but I play football. I play football for my team, Clapham Southgate, which actually developed from a Newcastle intramural team. But I'm often seeing my friends, going to the pub, etc. So it's a really, really social place to be. I think what I would say, just in terms of working and living, is it's really important in London to kind of know that you're making that adaptation from university to kind of working life, and the exercise and taking care of yourself is really important. So, you know, I try and go for a run most days. It clears my head. But, you know, some people obviously join a gym, other people do yoga. It really doesn't matter what it is, but I think having a kind of method to kind of clear your head is really useful. And things like getting enough sleep, and you know, not burning the candle at both ends is definitely advice that I'd give to anyone. Some people asked about the financial side of moving to London. So you know, a couple of notes I've made is pret-a-manger is very much a false friend, and I would recommend people, you know, make your own lunch and treat yourself every once in a while. But small things like making your own lunch. In terms of getting around, buses are cheap, and keep an eye out for the tube, because it really does add up actually in terms of your budget in London. But generally, if you keep an eye out on your budget, things are fine. I mean, in terms of a normal working day, you know, I work from probably 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a quick lunch break in the middle. But I think what most people find that I speak to, and my friends find, that they just get really engrossed in their job and really enjoy that process of really getting into the details of it. So, you know, the days go very, very quickly. And, you know, in terms of being in the pandemic, look, it's been less good than when we were in the offices, because you really miss out on some of those kind of coffee room chats and those sort of more casual discussions. But you do get a lie-in, which is sort of a side benefit of it. You know, just perhaps some advice on starting work and you know, moving into a more kind of professional situation. You know, I would always say that work is a marathon and not a sprint. You don't have to be excellent overnight when you start your job, and things like consistently high performance do really get noticed. So it's important to kind of keep the faith, keep conversations with those around you, taking on feedback. And after a while, you know, you will move up in your organization. And then it just comes down to the simple stuff like being punctual and being really enthusiastic, wanting to take on new opportunities and new challenges. I also really recommend getting involved in the social stuff around which company you're in, and going on socials and engaging with people. Because that's really how you build a lot of soft skills with people, which can improve the kind of team ethic. And then another kind of piece of advice I would give to people starting work is in London is really being honest with your line manager and those people managing you, saying when you're having a problem, saying when you think you've done something well or less well. I've never come out of an honest conversation with my line manager feeling worse. I've always felt better. Quick word about housing. There are so many great places to live in London. You've got an amazing tube network. I think just for me, do the maths on what you can afford, and make sure that you have enough at the end of the month after rent to go out and enjoy yourself. In terms of places to look for housing, you know, there's obviously Spare Room, which is a very popular website, and other kind of estate agents that are really tailored towards the sort of young professional market, like London Shared, which I know is one which pairs young professionals up with really high quality housing. So look, all in all, I've never ever had a moment of regret moving to London. It's a fantastic place to be, a great social scene, and you know, post-pandemic, it will absolutely return to that amazing buzzing city. All I would say is keep an eye out on your budgets, and make sure that you take care of yourself and look after yourself in what is an exciting, dynamic city. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much. I was a bit confused by the George and the Ronnie, so that's why I called it.
You're not the first one. You're not the first one.
So thank you so much for that insight. Really, it's really fascinating to hear your pieces of advice and your words of wisdom. So thanks a lot for that. So the next person to speak will be Kweku. So if you could just come off mute and we can hear more about your experience as well.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Kweku and I graduated from pharmacy at Newcastle in 2019. So whilst at Newcastle, as I mentioned, studied pharmacy. I was also the vice president of the Pharmacy Society. And whilst there, I really did take the opportunity to really get engaged with a lot of the societies that were there and meet a lot of people as much as possible. In doing so, it also allowed me to form a network, which I'll come back to later in my presentation. So since graduating, I went on to do what's known as a pre-registration year at a hospital and a clinical commissioning group. That process in terms of finding a job was quite unique in that there was a nationalised recruitment system. But in terms of my approach to get through that system, it was also a case of leaning on peers and finding out how they got through the process, and again utilising that network that was there. And after doing that, I'm now in the process of moving into a role within policy, and I'll explain a bit more about that later on. So in terms of moving to London, there are several tips that I haven't gained, things I learned the hard way and things that other people pointed me in the right direction. So in terms of travel and accommodation, I think one was right in mentioning the fantastic tube network that is there. I think it's very easy to see locations that are close to perhaps the area that you're going to work in, but really the public transport system really does alleviate. You might have a place that's 20-minute walk away, that's quite expensive, but equally you might find somewhere that's less expensive, but it's a 20-minute tube ride away. Personally, I love the tube system. I know it's not for everybody, but just keep an eye on that. And as well as that, another key thing that's important to know that helps with budgeting is finding out if your future employer offers a season ticket. I found that to be really helpful. Essentially, in your first or so month, they might give you a lump sum of money to actually purchase a season ticket, which makes life a lot easier. Essentially, you're able to travel around different zones, and you don't feel as if you're spending money since it's coming out at a slightly reduced rate from your paycheck beforehand. So that's another top tip. And as well as that, socially within London, I think it's a great place for friends. It's also a fantastic place to be able to do things alone if you want to, going to galleries and so forth, and having the opportunity to meet new friends, other professionals, and also people that are just passing by through London. I know Airbnb and loads of other social events and apps have a lot of events for meeting friends and partaking in various social events. Again, it seems weird saying this at this moment in time, but that's something that did exist and most probably will exist going forward. So that's what I'd say to that point. In terms of actually getting jobs, I think I mentioned earlier the importance of a network, and I think that's something that you can lean on Newcastle University to do so. So utilising platforms like LinkedIn can be quite great. When you're looking at roles that interest yourself, one thing I admittedly do is look to see if there's someone else from university that's there, because they are more likely to have that connection. What I found is that they tend to go the extra mile when providing you some advice. So that's something that I'd really suggest you do going forward. And subsequently doing the same when you get to that position yourself. As well as that, understanding that when you're applying to applications, I think sometimes less is more. Seeing or really trying to get a good understanding of the application process from getting insight from others, namely other students, and also the university careers platform. I certainly used the careers platform even a year after I graduated, whether it was just to get a quick update on my CV or to get some advice from other students about different areas and how to make the leap from a different sector to other sectors. So personally, again, I've come from a healthcare background, and in working in a hospital, I think it is relatively, or was relatively social, and understanding that people are friendly. Everybody has the same sort of pressures as well. Like Ronnie mentioned, being honest with your line manager and those around you. Other people are likely to have gone through the same experiences that you're currently going through. So feel free to be quite open about that, because you pick up odd and fantastic tips along the way. And just finally from me, I'll just reiterate what I've just said earlier. So the importance of network, feeling comfortable referring back to Newcastle when necessary. I know there's a new NCR Spark platform that is almost like a Newcastle version of LinkedIn. That's I found to be quite useful, especially when finding my new job. And again, just being honest with one another and being open and understanding that London has real and wonderful things for different people. It's not just for one type of person. That's what I'd say. If you want to be alone, there's loads of things you can do alone. If you want to be social and going out as much as possible in and on lockdown time, then that's there for you too. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kweku. You actually finished like 2 minutes early, so you caught me a little bit off guard. Thank you so much for that those helpful hints. It's really fantastic to hear about your experiences and the advice that you're giving to others, especially like what you said about if you want to do stuff alone, you can. If you're more social, you can do it. So thank you so much for that. So the next, I just want to welcome the next speaker, which is Joey. So if Joey can just unmute yourself and speak to us. Hi, Joey.
Hi everyone. So I'm Joey Aoun. I'm graduated from Newcastle University in a master's in urban energy, 2018, and currently I'm an environmental designer at Foster & Partners. So I'm gonna take you through my journey from leaving Newcastle and then up to until now. So I'm an international student at Newcastle. I started in 2017 my job search. So 3 months after being enrolled in my master's, I started my job search as early as this because I was aware about my work visa commitments and requirements being an international applicant. I started my job search via LinkedIn. It was, as Ronnie and previously mentioned, LinkedIn and networking platforms were really helpful for me to reach out to the positions I wanted to. And beside than this, I did consult the career service at Newcastle, which was of a huge help, helping me organizing my CV, preparing like a tailored cover letter for job positions. I got hooked for a few interviews later than in the process. And this is when I moved to London. I started at the beginning as in an internship at Foster & Partners. Internship was really the best way for me to start as an international applicant, because by then they don't have to issue me a work visa and I can still extend my student visa and work for the next 3 or 4 months until this visa is due. So this gave me the good time, gave the employer the good time to see my performance, to see that I qualify for this position, and then they did the effort of doing the whole process of issuing the Tier 2 work visa, which is a costly, timely process actually. So I do recommend you start as early as you can in your job search. And even if you started as an internship or in a graduate position, I think this is the best way as an international for us to start a job before seeking directly a work visa being issued. Moving to London, I had to find property. This is like accommodation was my biggest issue in here, as everyone said. I first came to the southwest region, and I really found like this being Fulham, Wandsworth, Clapham, this area, all of that. I really found it a very good area to live in because it's cheaper than others. It's very well connected, and it's a lively zone still of Zone 2 in London. So I moved. I moved as shared flats and houses because the fees you will gonna expect paying something like talking about the starting salary, you would expect paying 40% of your salary just for a room in a place. So yes, accommodation is costly, and better if you can find somewhere very close to your job, to where you're employed, because yes, buses are cheap, but then taking the tube every day and the buses can add up later on. So if you manage to find somewhere really close to your work, this would be the optimal scenario. Talking about what I do, my job position. So I come from an architectural background. I finished my studies in architect, and I later specialized in my master's in urban energy and sustainable design. And this is when I started my position as environmental designer, joining the environmental engineering team at Foster & Partners. In terms of working hours, I worked 9 to 6 with a quick lunch break in between. And then more on that, tips about jobs and how to thrive in London. I would say if you are to join any chartership, please, like, this is a very good point to do so in a very competitive market in here. So I'm talking about me being an architect. I would pursue my full chartership as architect. I would register with institution. Similarly, as I am an environmental engineer, I would do so as well. And for many other professions, the same apply. So you have always to seek higher in a competitive market for you to thrive. Network and socialize. Already previous panelists mentioned this, and I do emphasize this point. Networking through LinkedIn. So yes, do reach out of Newcastle alumni. They will be of help. They might introduce you to new opportunities, or they just might give you an overview of their current job, give you hints and advices. Socialize. London is like, no wonder London is like a small word. So like lively events, lively everything. It's very easy to do sports around, to meet people. So socializing with your colleagues is a very important thing as well, to get you continuing in your job, but then to learn from them, to observe. That's like, don't just be focused on shining yourself, but always thrive within your team and within your wider environment. So that's it all from my side. I'll be waiting for the Q&A sections to answer more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joey. That was really, really helpful. I really appreciate what you were saying and your point of view. So, sorry, my view has changed a little bit. My laptop was getting a bit hot and it tends to cut off. So that's why my view is slightly different. So on to our last but not least, Maria. First of all, apologies for mispronouncing your name so badly.
No worries.
I apologize about that.
Such a long name.
So over to you, Maria.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm very excited. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here because my uni years were my best years. I still keep like a very nice memory until today. I'm still in touch with my classmates, with every connection I made, which is quite a nice thing. So every time I remember uni, I'm like, such a nice time. Anyway, so I'm going to tell you a bit about my experience. It might be quite different because I came from Uruguay, which is a very small country down in South America. So moving country and moving to a new city is super exciting. There's lots to discover in London. London is amazing, but it's also hard at times. So my advice is kind of through that way. And well, first of all, interview process and how it affected me a bit. When I was starting my dissertation, I decided I wanted to work here, so I started looking for jobs. So my first piece of advice to you all is to prioritize, to not go crazy on the job hunting. It's very important to get a job, but first remember what you're here for, if you're coming from the UK or from wherever you are. I was doing my dissertation, I had to do like 25 interviews, I was looking for jobs, and then I was like, I'm not going to do any of the two if I keep on doing this. So first, remember why you're here, finish your dissertation, and then you can look for a job, and then life surprises you sometimes. So just try to keep your focus and prioritize. Then my second advice is don't be discouraged. This happened to me loads. I come from a very small country, and coming to London to look for a job is such a competitive city. There's people from all over the world. There's people with experience from in very specific things to wider things that have worked in different parts of the world. And it's very, very competitive. I can tell you, I applied to 80 jobs. I'm not kidding, 80. And only got like some interviews, some assessment centers, and then a few offers, but it took me a long time to get the role I wanted. And even I remember one interview that the person who did the interview to me called me the next day and told me, oh, we really like you, you're a great candidate, your interview was perfect, but there was a slightly stronger candidate. And you can get discouraged a bit, so keep on, like, work hard, which is my third advice. Work hard, as all the other speakers mentioned. Use the career service, go to LinkedIn, go to Indeed, go to Glassdoor, the Guardian jobs, use all the resources available, and also look for information, research the organization you're doing the interview on, prepare, read the essay many times, read the cover letter, look for the essays. If you write essay, Amazon interview, there are like so many examples. So depending where you apply, you surely will find something. And then my fourth piece of advice is that, as I told you, interviews are also for you. So I had a few interviews, but the role or the organization didn't seem quite right. So use the interview to get to know the company and kind of the feel of it, and then realize it might not be the role for you, even if you are the person they're looking for. So take that into consideration. Then working, so far my experience has been like amazing. I love the organization, the charity I work for. I love my team. I love the work I do. It has come with so much learning, but my advice is, as some of them, the other speakers mentioned, get to know everyone, book inductions, talk to people, put yourself out there, and it will make your life easier because you will understand the roles, and also it will make you socialize and create connections, which is very useful. And then a bit about accommodation and working here. I live in the north, in northwest in Kilburn, and my advice is just go to the neighborhood before you're moving, get a feel of it, see the places you are, see if the connections are good to your workplace or to the things you're doing, well, post-lockdown. But getting a feel of the neighborhood is very important, and seeing if it's right for you. Then also it can be quite hard financially. I'm not going to lie, and I think Ronnie said that the importance of the budget, and you know, and I think Keku also said something about the season tickets, and try to make a budget and plan. And yeah, you can enjoy yourself, but yeah, you have to be very intelligent about spending, and it's just an expensive city. And advice from my side is to buy a bike. I know this is how it's like, but I have like cycled not only in lockdown but before, and it's a great way to get to places. Sometimes it's quicker than the tube, and not only good for the environment, but then you save so much money on traveling. And then my final advice about living in London is, well, post-lockdown at this stage, but try to find, I play in a hockey club, and it has been a great experience. It has made me get to know so many people, and my group of friends here is from my hockey club. But just find a club or something if you are into sports, or an arts club, go to the gym, join, start volunteering. That's our very good activities and ways to meet people. And I feel sometimes the city is so big that you have to work yourself, your connections, which is natural. But I feel that's my last advice. Just try to join something, get in a club, do activities, put yourself out there, and you will really, I think, enjoy a lot. Like all my experiences since I came in 2018 until now has been like so much personal growth and getting to know so many different people. So it's just an amazing experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria, for that brilliant insight into, you know, living, working, and getting around London. So, so you've heard from all our 4 panelists. So now the floor is open to people to submit their questions. We've had some questions already submitted. So I'm just going to, you know, get on with those. But if you have any questions, please use the chat function, and we will try and get through as many as possible. So one of the first ones, which I think is very, very relevant to what's happening now, seeing as London has entered lockdown 2.0, is someone has said, how different is London before and after lockdown in terms of work environment and development opportunities? So I don't know who wants to pick up that one. Ronnie, I'll go with you.
No problem, no problem. The answer is very, very different. You know, there was this very strange kind of time around mid-March, just before the official lockdown, when you kind of felt things sort of rumbling to a halt. And then obviously we had the announcement from the Prime Minister on the 23rd of March. And then obviously in that full period of lockdown, look, I mean, I don't think we should sugarcoat it. It was a very unpleasant experience for most people. All of those shorter, smaller conversations that you have in the office with colleagues turned into phone calls or were lost, actually. So that's something I found very difficult. I've had a number of colleagues over the last 6 months that have actually started at my organisation and have never been in the office. So they found that obviously very difficult. So clearly, when you take going to the office, when you take the commute and the day-to-day living in the office, working in the office, out of your structure, it has a massive impact on your life. I mean, all I would say is that there was a kind of obviously that point before the second lockdown when things were moderately lifted, and we were fortunate that one of our offices was remained open. So we were able to actually go in with social distancing and with all of the things like masks, etc., and sanitizer. So actually that did restore some degree of normality. But in terms of lots of people being in the office, that was never the case. It was always just sort of 4 or 5 people maximum. So look, London's been very different. I think the only other thing I would say is something I love about London is the ability to kind of make spontaneous plans. Go to the pub, go for a drink, go and go to a restaurant or whatever. The fact that we have to book now, etc., and all of that has obviously made it a bit more tricky to have those kind of spontaneous plans. Running into someone at the pub, used to love doing that. That's not a thing anymore because, you obviously have to book it. So look, life has changed a lot in terms of London, but we're all hoping that it will return back to normal in the spring. And perhaps Kwaku can give us a bit more insight on that.
Yeah, I'd echo everything you said again. So I had the opportunity to see it from, in March I was working in the pharmacy and in the hospital, but it has completely changed. Having said that, in terms of traveling around, I think people are, again, just coming back to the tubes, people are less likely to go in the tubes and they are less packed and so forth. And again, there was that weird period where things did get back to some sort of degree of normality, where you had you were able to do social stuff and sports and boarding and things were open. I think people or organizations definitely did make as much of an effort to restore normality as possible. And I don't doubt that would be the same going forward. So the one thing I would just urge you to have is the ability to adapt to whatever climate you end up in whenever you graduate or find yourself in a job.
Let me unmute myself. I do that all the time. I start talking and realize that I'm on mute. So Maria, what about you? How have you found sort of London pre and during and now at lockdown?
Yeah, it has, as Ronnie and Kwaku said, it has been hard. It's lots of adaptation. I think that's the learning from this generation affected by the pandemic, is all the adaptation and the flexibility, all the ability to cope. I think we would have like a trauma. I must be serious about it, but lots of an ability to cope and to adapt to the circumstances. In terms of finding roles, my roommate has been looking for a job and it's quite competitive with everything that's happening, but I know friends who have found jobs. It's just the same, working hard, lots of research, lots of preparing in advance for your interviews and Zoom interviews. So not having to go somewhere to do the interview, which I guess is a good thing. But then, yeah, pre-lockdown, much more social life, much more things to do. You could, on a Friday, find an exhibition somewhere, go to a pub randomly, I don't know, improvise something. But now everything's much more like booked in advance or diary and yeah, even when now that we're in lockdown, I guess it's the hardest time of all, but during the summertime with nice weather and the parks and just taking care of yourself, just find the ways to cope and to adapt and to make new type of plans and to surprise yourselves enjoying just being in the park reading or things like that. So I think it has changed those, but it will pass. And maybe by the time you are looking for jobs next year, like we will hopefully be traumatized but forgotten about it.
Thanks, Maria. What about you, Joey? How have you found it? London, the change.
Sure. Like similarly, it changed like hell. Really, like it changed a lot. But then I would emphasize like what Maria just said. You would start enjoying like the smallest simple thing. Like who would enjoy, like at the beginning when we had the serious lockdown, March, April, we would really enjoy going out for doing grocery shopping. Like the simplest thing was really enjoyable, just to do something, to go out and socialize. And then socializing in the park, enjoying like just being with friends, without grabbing beer and being in loud places like pubs and stuff, doing our workout routine. So we had our own time and we enjoyed our simple moment, but it's enough. We need to socialize. So it's good for a certain time and that's it. In terms of job, it was hectic. The first months we moved working from home, it was hectic for us. This digitalization of things was really a challenge at the beginning, but look at us now. Like now we're meeting all together via platforms. It makes it easier to reach people for collaboration. So with one click, we can now, everyone is ready and prepared to meet people around the globe with hundreds connected on a call. So yes, it can be more effective, but we're losing the dynamics of things by having pure direct interaction. So this what we're missing in our work environment, the dynamism of stuff and socializing bit and live interaction. But yes, it has been challenging, but we're adapting very well. And I think our efficiency and we're dealing with it in terms of work extremely well. And the proof is us extending working from home, even if the situation allows us to go back to the company.
Thank you so much, Jerry. So another question here is, did any of you feel like a move from London, to London was necessary for your career? And, how has that worked out? Has it worked out well? Was it difficult? So it's kind of a two-parter. So did you feel like a move to London was necessary to advance your career? And secondly, how did you find that process? And I am going to start with Maria.
Yes, in my case, coming from a small country, I really wanted a change and a challenge. That's why I came to study the master's and then stayed working in London. And it has been like, oh my God, such a great jump in my career. I have learned so many things. There are so many things we do differently back home that I can't wait to get back to change or to work on. And also I feel the beauty of it is that things that I did back home, like being very social or like talking to everyone in the organization, have really made me stand out. So that I think is also important, not only how coming here will jump your career and will literally, there's a world of opportunities. Anything you want to do in London, you will find the role, like anything. But then also it's important to bring your own like personality and your own way of doing things to it, because I think that's what makes you stand out from other people, and I think that's important too.
Awesome. And I will also ask that question to Ronnie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Maria is absolutely spot on with that. I think, personally speaking, a lot of my friends had moved down from Newcastle, but then also people that I knew from school, because I'm kind of from the southeast as well. A lot of them had kind of coalesced around London, so that was an initial kind of tie for me to move back down to London. But then there's obviously that massive professional reason as to why I wanted to move down to London, and clearly the political centre of England, of the UK really, is Westminster. So to kind of be around there and to develop my professional contacts around Westminster is something I've been able to do, and I wouldn't have been really able to do that if I wasn't based in London. So whilst I think perhaps you could isolate it down to one reason, it was the kind of whole package that was kind of presented in front of me about London. And I think everyone else on the panel has made a really good case as to why London is such a fantastic, dynamic city, not to mention the fact that it's one of the financial centres of the world, and working and living in that kind of environment affords you lots of opportunities, which are certainly there. So absolutely, it was a sort of no-brainer for me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Another question is, how did you find the transition from study life to working life? I'm going to start with Kweke on that one. How did you find that transition?
So ironically, the way pharmacy works is that you have a year where you still have to study to fully become a pharmacist. So I still had a sort of studying hat on, but in terms of adapting, it was really a case of recognizing that you learn in different ways, and you can learn a great deal whilst on the job in a host of ways. So there's, I think Maria pointed to that personal growth. That's mightily important, especially in terms of going forward and trying to progress. being able to get the soft skills that are necessary, as Ronnie mentioned. That's also an amazing part of being in an environment such as London, where you are able to encounter diverse groups of people and work with people from different organizations and backgrounds. So I think that was mightily important. But I think an ethos that was instilled at university was the recognition that your education was always more than just your degree. And equally, I think understanding that your education is more than just your job is something that you could apply whilst you're working in London and trying to get loads of different experiences, be that volunteering or just participating in your community and really trying to get that insight. So in essence, I think my ability to adapt or adapting was just a case of being able to throw myself into the situation being living in London.
Awesome. Thank you, Kweku. What about you, Joey? How did you find the transition?
Yeah, sure. So I would say student life is more free. Work life might have restrictions. So yes, I was given an assignment university days. Then I can do this my way, like my own pace and everything. But then coming back to work life, we have deadlines. We have superiors where we should take opinions. So I think it's more restricting, but then it gives you more challenge to learn because you have wider society, wider environment to learn from of professionals, obviously. So it gives you this as a plus. And then being in London in this big market, like competitive market, you are surrounded by people like really professionals with very well experienced. So you have the good people to learn from, I would say, in terms of that. And then it is a hub, yes, post studies coming to work life. It is an opportunity for you to do side activities like they just mentioned now volunteering. I'm a STEM ambassador, for instance. So it's good to keep the side of things, not just limit yourself of the work professional things of your area of study, because this goes beyond to maybe being involved in other activities. So do seek so. It will teach you more into interpersonal skills and soft skills on that. So it's a good opportunity.
So all of you have mentioned, how, there's a lot of opportunity in London, but that's a good thing and can have a little bit of a, negative side in that it's very, very competitive. So a lot of the questions I'm seeing is kind of a two-parter. How do you stand out amongst all this competition in London? So you're fresh out of uni, London is, you follow the yellow brick road to London. How do you stand out amongst all that competition, especially if you've come in from another country? And I'm going to start off with Maria on that one as well.
Okay, well, first, it's important to know, like, there are things you can control and things that are a bit just luck or unluck, I would say, which is a hard thing to understand, but that happens. So I think the way to stand out is to all the best you can in everything in your control, which is preparing for the interview, researching the organization, understanding what they expect from you as a candidate, understanding which questions you need to ask them to engage with them. Also, sometimes, like, for example, you have certain values as a person and then you see the organization has the same values. Well, be smart about that, connect with that, tell them that, and that's very important. So I feel to stand out first, all the research, all the hard work, all the things you can control. Then try to be yourself, try to showcase your personality, which is unique to everyone, so that can make you stand out. And then there are things you can just not control. Sometimes they're looking for a specific profile, for specific personality characteristics, and sometimes you're not quite the candidate for some businesses, and then you get another organization which are, you're the candidate they're looking for. So I think just try to do everything under your control to prepare, then show the aspects of your personality that make you unique, who you are, what you like doing, if you're passionate, if you like sports, if you like, I don't know, playing board games, whatever is what you like doing, and try to show like what makes you you. And then just yeah, sometimes you will get the job, or as it happened to me, like they call you and they tell you you're a great candidate, but there was a person that fitted more the description or what we're looking for, and that's nothing to do with you or like the organization. It's just things that happen, and yeah, other times they will tell you, yes, you're the person we are looking for, and that's great.
Yeah. What about you, Kweku? What do you think people can do to stand out in this sort of very competitive area that is London?
I think, like Maria said, research about the organisation and the company is very important, but understanding yourself is mightily important as well. And with a lot of opportunity, I know I've experienced this myself, it's very tempting to, and I think it's a good thing to go for as much as possible, but really understanding what's right for you is the best and first step to take, even though it can seem to be counterintuitive. I think there's a balance between the current climate where we find ourselves in, and it's hard and we're tempted to really just go for everything, but less can be more in most instances. So really focusing on certain applications would stand you in good stead. And once you're doing that, you'll be able to identify the parts of that role or organization that really suit you as an individual. But in order to do that, it's really important for you to take time to reflect on your strengths and what does make you slightly unique to other people. So if you have come from a different country or you have something unique, then really highlighting that. And equally, if you do have the opportunity to engage, or I would actually recommend that you try and engage with someone at that organization to try and find out what the culture of that organization is like, to find out if it's right for you and if you're right for them, and find out if that person at the organization would be able to say, actually, there's this aspect of your character that's really suited. Then you'll be able to really focus on that and bring that out in your application. So that's that's what I'd recommend in terms of putting your best foot forward.
Awesome. What about you, Ronnie? Quickly.
Well, goodness me, I wish I'd had Maria and Kweku to talk to me before I went to do all my interviews. Fantastic advice, no, and generally just really spot on. I think I really like that point about controlling the controllables. And I often make the mistake. I still do it to this day, but I managed to just kind of put this at the back of my mind. I just think about all of the people that are applying, and I think about the statistical chances of all of that. My advice to anyone would be to just put that to one side and focus on you and focus on your application and making every word of that as good as it can be. And there are a couple of more procedural parts to that. So making sure that your CV is really aligned to the language and the demands of the job description. Getting a cover letter that conveys both passion but also competence over the role that's really up for grabs. And really kind of playing the game often of the way in which HR and a lot of these job processes go in terms of meeting those demands and really making it easy for whoever's reading your application to put you through to that next round. But I absolutely agree with Kweku when he says that maybe later on in the application stage, when it's about your personality, more about sort of how you come across in an interview, is really knowing yourself and coming across in a truthful and authentic way. Because when you do that, I think you give a much more authentic and legitimate account of yourself. And the final thing I would say is, please just never lose hope and never lose, there may be times when you feel a little bit down about the situation. I've certainly felt it during the process in which I tried to find a job, but it always works out, and you've got a great badge of a university behind you in Newcastle University. So be optimistic.
Awesome. Thank you, Ronnie. And very, very, very quickly, Joey, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, well, it's hard to add on that. Amazing advice, but I would say just tailor your application and personalize it. So yes, as they mentioned, do research the culture of the company, do research what's the job description, and do fit this in your cover letter in a way or another. It's not to fake it, but then to really find the common ground between what your background brings to the company and what the company really wants. And then the other side is be authentic and be yourself. So what makes you special in a competitive market is your personality on top of your background, educational background. They might be 100 of architects, but then it's your personality and the flavor you would add to this. And work on your soft skills. That's a thing that university, yes, do teach us this, but then it's not compulsory. But it's something we should seek on doing in parallel of our knowledge. Knowledge is key, but then your soft skills, interpersonal skills, communication are really as good, as important as the others to secure a good job. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Well, that was the last question. I just wanted to say a huge, massive thank you to Maria, to Ronnie, to Kweke, to Joey for their fantastic insights and advice and guidance. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's attended, to Newcastle University who has organized this, for everybody to sending in those amazing questions. We couldn't get to them all. But I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all our panelists. You've been absolutely fantastic. I've been absolutely wrapped from start to finish. I just wish I had this when I was starting and came down to London. Ooh, I won't give away my age, but all those years ago. So thank you so much for that. I think I'm handing over to Rebecca now to sort of close us out.
Hello, yes, thank you, Ngozi and our panelists today. I hope you have all enjoyed being here, and I hope our guests have enjoyed it as well. As mentioned, the event has been recorded, so anything that anybody might have missed can be recapped on YouTube when that goes live, hopefully tomorrow. So without further ado, I shall let everybody go on to enjoy their evenings, and thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you and good.